She was supposed to be the answer. Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, the woman who promised to shake things up, to stand firm, to never back down. But there's a difference between standing firm and standing alone. There's a difference between conviction and stubbornness. And sometimes, the decisions that feel most powerful in the moment become the ones that haunt you forever. When you hold power, every choice becomes a story. Every decision ripples outward in ways you can never fully predict or control. Kristi Noem learned this the hard way, not through quiet lessons but through public reckoning. The decisions she made weren't small. They weren't the kind of political moves that get buried in policy papers and forgotten. They were the kind that made people gasp, that sparked conversations at dinner tables across America, that forced people to ask, who is this woman really and what does she actually believe? The puppy incident became the symbol of something much larger. A 2-month-old dog, a trigger, a decision made in a moment that would define her in the public consciousness for years. She wrote about it in her own book, confessing the act without hesitation, as if transparency would somehow transform a controversial decision into an understandable one. But that's not how the public works. That's not how memory works. What she thought showed strength looked like cruelty to millions. What she saw as honesty, others saw as a window into something darker. A willingness to eliminate problems without mercy, without hesitation, without looking back. But that was just the beginning. The controversial decisions kept coming. The refusal to lock down during COVID while other governors scrambled to protect their citizens. The choice to deploy National Guard troops to the southern border in a move that felt more theatrical than tactical. The statements about targeting reporters, about standing against what she called tyranny, about drawing lines in the sand that couldn't be uncrossed. Each decision added another layer to a portrait of a woman who seemed determined to prove something, to make a statement, to be remembered for her unwillingness to compromise. What made her decisions truly controversial wasn't just the actions themselves. It was the pattern. It was the consistency of choosing the harder path, the more provocative stance, the decision that would generate headlines rather than solve problems. There was a calculus happening whether conscious or not. Every controversial choice elevated her profile, made her name bigger, gave her more relevance in a political landscape that rewards spectacle as much as substance. The tragedy of Kristi Noem's story is that she came to power with genuine support, with people who believed she would bring change. But somewhere along the way the decisions became less about serving and more about proving. Less about leading and more about fighting. Her controversial choices built her reputation, but they also built walls. They alienated people. They created a narrative where she was no longer seen as a leader but as someone willing to push boundaries at any cost, even when those boundaries existed for reasons. Now, when people hear her name, they don't think about policy achievements. They think about the decisions that shocked them. They think about a woman who seemed willing to cross lines that others wouldn't. And that's the real consequence of controversial decisions. They define you in ways you never intended, in ways that follow you everywhere, in ways that become impossible to escape.